Okay, wasn't quick enough on the buttons there. I think we are now live. Hope you can hear me okay. You know, my usual paranoia. Let me know if you can or if it's glitchy. I was just warning Jason, who's our guest. He's just loitering in our lobby. I was saying that if I drop off air, it's still live. Don't pick your nose. He's got a hold court. If anything, I think you'd probably all be cheerleading and celebrating if I dropped off air, because Jason's got such an interesting story to tell that we certainly want to hear more from him today than me. Thanks a lot for everyone as ever for participating in all of these, but particularly after the back of Monday's session with Michael, we've had some great questions come in, and that's the sort of thing that helps set the pace. Even if it's not that we'd ask your question directly, as those themes emerge, as you guys let me know, I'd like to hear more about this or from this person, etc. That's exactly what fuels these shows. And we try to keep us finger on the pulse and identify what's going on, especially in MSK practice, in healthcare, in education, as well as then touching on current affairs when appropriate. But it's you guys that help us to do that because you're part of the conversation. And then something like this drops on my lap where I'm like, well, it's an outrage, it's an injustice. Let's shake his fist in the right direction and see if we can shed a light on it, but then also try to see if we can collaborate to try and right some wrongs. And the story I'm telling here is of Regeneration Physio in Rotherham, Jason Beaumont, who I'm going to bring in a second. Basically, the story as I saw it and was alerted to was that the council was shutting them down despite being a physio practice operating under COVID-safe procedures. Obviously, the support for the NHS that occurs through that by proxy. We're going to go into that in all detail, so I won't go on any further, but it just felt like something that straight away, let's get this on the show, let's shine a light on it, but then also, and be aware, in this show, we want to be sort of talking a little bit about how we can get together and support not just this practice, but the fact that this could be a precedent that we don't want to then be distributed beyond. You know, it seems like something we need to stand firm on. So without further ado, let me hopefully click the right buttons, take away my little frame thing and bring in Jason. Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you. Hi, John.
Brilliant. Well, to start off by telling the listeners a little bit about you, your practice, and then just get stuck into this crazy ass story.
Okay, so I'm a HCPC Reg Physio. I've been in EIS and did Paralympics, and I've dotted around sport and also had my own private practice for a while. We started expanding. I left EIS in 2018. We started expanding the practices, and then we took on a site in Rotherham in October with a view to growing our practice there. We were fine in lockdown one. Lockdown one, we were there. We weren't present. We've had our room retrofitted. And then lockdown two, no problems. And then things have escalated on this time. Within that practice, we've got myself kind of overseeing and doing a few bits. We've got a physiotherapist, a sports therapist, a sports rehabilitator as well.
And so I didn't realise the time frame. So that practice has only been open since October of last year.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So you weren't on site then for lockdown one, but I noticed on your on the regeneration. Sorry, I'm saying it all wrong.
All right.
Regeneration Physio. You had closed maybe other premises in lockdown one as we were all trying to work out what the hell was going on. But by the time everything became clear as to how we should operate, you've had no problems in any of your other locations since?
No. So we're fine. Yeah, lockdown one, like everyone, we shut because we didn't know the landscape. From there, we were able to, like everyone else, build our risk assessments, get things open, running, and work safely. That was fine through lockdown two. What we actually did was, and this is probably where I've made a mistake. So with lockdown two, the gym owner was worried about the council had been like checking the gyms, rattling the doors, the police been checking. And although they're above board with this lockdown two and everything, he was panicking that us now being in there and patients coming in and out, they were going to experience some bad press or get some issues. So I emailed the council at lockdown two saying, hi, we've set up a physio practice. Here's our process. Here's our procedures. Here's our risk assessments. They were fine, lovely, great job, have a nice day, Merry Christmas, all forthcoming, sound. So then for lockdown the third one, this one, I did the same again, emailed the same guy, said, we've changed, I'm going to forward it on to somebody else because my role's changed or whatnot. And then it kind of it hit the fan, I suppose, from there.
Well, jump into that then. So what have you, start me from there as to the council got in touch with you from that point, and it was aggressive from the get-go, it seems.
Yeah,
I've heard.
Yeah. So firstly, I'm waiting for some information back from our legal teams on how I can release all the emails, because it'll just show a really nice flavour of how this has all come about. There are two problems for me with this whole matter. So number one is there a potential issue with the legislation that is allowing interpretation to close us, because we are closed now, they're shutters. So yesterday I got served by the environmental officers and 4 police officers, and I was just emptying the safe. So we got struck. So is there an issue in the legislation that needs addressing so we can get the CSP and everybody else to help? Because unfortunately, this could roll over everybody in private practice unless you own your own individual building. And then number 2 is, why have Rotherham Council approached this with such hostility, with in such a time that's making people redundant, it's closing businesses? So my first email back from the council was, quote, "It is our opinion you should close. You must close within 24 hours or express, you'll get a prohibition notice." So I replied saying, I don't think you fully understand the situation. Here is our situation. We're in a self-contained bit within the building. We have our own access if we should need to use it. 1, 2, 3, 4. He then replied saying, "No, I've spoken to our legal team. It's our opinion that you are operating from within a closed premises, and therefore you must close." I spoke to our legal team. They said, under what section? You can't just say my opinion is. They've got to give you the line in the legislation that they're trying to enforce.
Of course, yeah.
So I replied saying, again, can you explain? And he said, "Mr. Beaumont, I've told you the council's position. Our opinion is you must close. This matter is now closed. If you open, you will be prosecuted under whatever, and we will not respond to any further correspondence." Right. So then I started getting a bit frustrated, but I've tried to play it down a little bit. The issue we've got as well is there's another business that operate within like the same commercial unit, who's a healthy meal prep company.
Yeah.
So they've got a commercial kitchen in there. They package stuff up, and then it's online orders, and like DPD can send it in like a freezer box to your house. So they've not contacted these guys yet, but they've obviously, we've been talking, and they've spoken to the gym owner. And the council told the gym owner that both our businesses can close. So Ben at NutriFast Food's gone to Instagram straight away and just had a bit of a grump about it, as he's right to do so. And it started to escalate. We jumped on the back of that because the council refused to accept my calls. They refused to reply to my emails. So we got in touch with a few of the councillors at Rotherham and Sarah Champion MP, who then managed to get the council to give us their legal position.
Yeah,
that came on Monday with 24 hours notice to close. And then we spoke to our legal team, who said, because it's local government, etc., and this could be setting precedent, the legal cost could go plus 100 to 200,000 pounds if it starts going up high court, etc. So although, sorry, the council also said, "Mr. Beaumont, we're not telling you to close your business. You just got to work from somewhere else." So during the national lockdown, this is the COVID safety department, by the way. So it's environmental health with superpower. They've been now told that, so we can employ someone to retrofit another unit. We can bring our patients to someone else's building. We can use like removal companies, etc., to transfer all that stuff out to a separate empty building, but we can't work from within this empty building.
Yeah, I mean, on this show, we've talked about logic and lack of on a variety of different levels, but this is just beyond belief, isn't it? There's hypocrisy all over the place, as well as it making absolutely no sense. And you've been clear to try and spell out the fact that there's just none of this makes any sense when it comes to trying to the public health benefits that they're suggesting and inferring, or the legislation is meant to protect. Let's try and give it the benefit of the doubt of saying that all of these lockdown orders are basically to try and reduce human contact, especially unnecessary contact or social contact, and this just does not do that. You know, it's actually counterproductive. But before we get stuck into that, because it's almost like the morals and ethics of it, but there's still just the affront on a legal basis seems fascinating. What What's your take on, because you wouldn't expect, I guess, maybe I'm being naive here, but you just wouldn't expect such a level of opinion-based amateurishness, for want of a better term, or just this that someone would be clumsy enough even to wield that power that way. Did that surprise you as it has me?
It did. The thing that was most disappointing was I can fully understand the council's position if they think that their interpretation of this legislation is what they have to follow through. And unfortunately, central governments put something in place that they've got to enforce. And I get that, but it's been pretty nasty. It's been so even when we got served, so we got served by two of these environmental community protection officers, COVID protection officers, I think they're now called, but it would have been environmental health, plus 4 police officers. And the police were just they were super lovely. They were really nice. But I also almost got read my rights by one of the officers. What she was doing is she was inferring her opinion on everything. And I was saying, my point with this is the facts and how you've chosen to interpret the law. And she's like, you don't interpret the law is the law. And I was like, well, no, like this case law.
Clearly not. You know, the letter of the law is in favour. It's the interpretation that's then making it dubious. They're bringing the grey areas. You're trying to go black and white on legal fronts, especially you know it in detail, because that's all of us, business owners like us, have been nothing but breathing boring governance, policy-based safety stuff for months now. So we know that law.
So we're trying to now take the position, say, well, healthcare is exempt. So is healthcare not only exempt from all of it, if that makes sense? Today, what I'll do also as well, I did a walkthrough before we got kicked out. I did a walkthrough what our clinic situation is like within this commercial property. So I'll pop that on our Instagram so people can see that we're not just like a back room in a gym. So the situation that we have is there's a big commercial unit that is, I suppose, a gym. Okay. However, it's all been chopped up. So we've got business rates, we've got rateable value, we've had the valuation office round, as have the other businesses within there. So they actually charge us rates for our space, but then at the moment they're saying that it's not our space no more. The reason they've got us is because we would use the gym's toilets. So we don't have our own independent toilet within the clinic. So you would walk. You don't have to go into the gym, but you go into the premises through the main door. You can walk around the side, and we've got a double door into a waiting room, and then a single door into the treatment room. And in the treatment room is a fire exit, and the fire exit could technically be our own separate access. Yeah.
We've been hearing, by the way, not just off the back of your story, sorry to interrupt there, Jason, but we've been hearing there's so many people that are in similar situations or more challenging. We've even got people that have got open-sided cordoned areas of gyms that are still able to practice because of the way in which they've been able to be clear to their landlords, whatever. Just to be clear as well, I'm sat in my studio, which is in our practice, which is actually, we have our own access, which is obvious, but we're actually an underlet. Yeah. So we pay rates, but we're an underlet that technically is above a gym. I mean, our situation on that front is actually more dubious than yours. So sorry, do go on.
No, but that's the thing with all of this. So I had an informal conversation with someone at the council today saying that the problem with this is it's not us trying to be cantankerous. There are significant issues with how this can express to everybody else, because although. Oh, hold on, my battery's low. One sec, super professional.
Right, well, let's hope Jason we don't lose Jason. This is getting interesting. Thank you so much for those of you that have been commenting, especially, there's plenty of outrage on this, and I really do agree with you. Janine saying unbelievable, feel for you. They're saying frustrating, sorry to hear about this. Sorry, go on, carry on, Jason.
So the issues that I can't really be bothered with the whole social media side of things. I do enjoy a good scrap, and I do quite like to get my teeth into some things. But I feel like we're going to have to fight this in the public domain, because it's been treated as black and white. It has been very aggressive from the start. And again, we've got no business with Rotherham Council because we've only been there 3 months. It's not like we've historically tried to cheat rates or do something like that. We've got a very, very open and honest situation. There's no cash in hand rent or anything. Everything is by the book. It's fine. So my situation is, if you think of somewhere like Meadowhall, a shopping centre, or even the smaller ones, where you can go in through the main door. There might be some toilets for everyone to share. The clothing shops are shut, but M&S is open. How is that different? And then when we're looking in terms of COVID safety, how does moving our practice make people safer because the gym is closed? It's an empty, vacant building. And I fail to get. I do understand if they're thinking that people are utilizing the gym, then that's fine. Find them. Do your job and find the gym. But our therapists, we've got a 1-in, 1-out policy. So we've got like an online check-in. So people are checking from the car, therapists meet them at the door, walk them straight through. So it's not even like there's groups of people in and out and swathes. So there is a bit of what seems to be a bit of a personal thing here. But yeah, going forward, so this legislation, basically the interpretation is that if you have a lease or a license, doesn't matter which one, from someone who've had to close because of the lockdown, you will have to close too. So it's ridiculous. Someone said about closing the toilet facilities. I've said that, and part of our risk assessment is patients can't really use the loo while they come. I know we shouldn't, but we've messaged them all saying, guys, toilets are really
please don't, or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of like we suggested in lockdown 1, but of course we're not going to mandate it, but avoid using the handrails. When we thought it was all surface transmission, we were just trying to make suggestions. But yeah, this is one of the things, and I suppose I totally understand, and it's a totally reasonable comment there from Richard. Thank you, Richard, for what you've said. But I just want to sort of say to people that I've only been in this a few days and nowhere near as close as you have to this, Jason. But one of the things I almost want to try and appeal to you all on here, and having heard Jason in this way, there's no lack of thoroughness here from him and his team. Let's try to stop rationalizing it because it's irrational. Now, we can suggest things that are logical, etc., but this is an illogical, irrational situation in which there isn't a consistency there. So I totally appreciate that comment. I'm not pushing back on it, Richard, but it's kind of like whenever we think of these things, we're all trying to do so, almost like we're being critical thinkers, clinical reasoners. It's like, no, it's something that is just a heavy hand in this instance of the state through the council, misinterpreting the circumstances and not looking at the detail, even though the detail makes it clear not only that this is an injustice, but also that it's counterproductive to the public health variables that they're trying to protect. And I think that's the thing that I think between us all, we all need to make sure we don't nitpick or grill you on questions. You tried this, you tried that, what about this? You've kind of been there by the sound of things, right?
I mean, we've gone through everything to the point that genuinely, I think I could mount a legal case to keep us open if we use the fire door, but I don't know what my patient's using the fire door when I could use the perfectly reasonable front door. For the other one. Anyway.
It's otherwise empty. Yeah, that's the thing. It's otherwise empty. That's what's fascinating, isn't it?
You also have no right of appeal. So you can put a complaint in, but if the fines start coming, you can't just kind of go, whoa, I don't think that should be appropriate to us. It's that the horse is bolted on that. So then you have to start to then mount a legal case, and it's just going to get really expensive. So again, like the implications are, we've got 1 salaried staff, like 3 self-employed staff. 2 of the self-employed staff, it's their sole income at that practice. So they're going to now be looking for universal credit. We're going to be looking at how we can either relocate the practice and pay double rent. Can we push the patients to other people or to our other clinics? It's difficult, and especially because we don't have an end date on this current lockdown. People are anxious whether they're just going to wait it out so we can open back up, or so it's massively impact on patient care. And unfortunately, I'm getting some quite upset messages from patients. And some have got a bit of angst as well. Like, I can't do anything. I'm really, really sorry. I don't know. And I know people have been there in lockdown 1 if you chose to shut your practice like we did, until we kind of got an idea of what
we sort of tried. Well, while we all sussed it out. It was like, well, legally, this was the funny thing. And also, just as a bit of due diligence ahead of this show, now, my position on this matter would not have changed. However, I did wonder and would have brought it to you. If you'd have been someone that legally we know we were all able to practice, but ethically at the time we were all thinking, like, till we get a handle on this, let's do our bit, and professionally it's right for us to not. Now, as I say, I'd have still been doing this show and it wouldn't have sounded much different, but I would have been admitting that there is a difference potentially, where there are some practices that we know just crossed their fingers and carried on sort of business as normal in a penny, whereas that's not the story here. It's not as if the council are looking on and thinking, well, you took the piss in lockdown 1 and so we're getting you. There's just no story there. In fact, you weren't even on site.
No. And there's so many variables of this that don't make sense. So the reason we're not going to roll over, I have had to shut because I don't want a massive penalty fine.
But so you've got sort of almost incident tape across the door, right? And there's been a bit of a scene been made on a couple of occasions with law enforcement, right?
The labelled as an environmental crime scene. So, environmental crime scene tape. So we've got to then speak to all the patients saying it's nothing to do with any of our safety measures. This is a legislative issue. They're unhappy with the premises we work from. There's no environmental health, especially in a global pandemic. Environmental crime scene.
Well, when the dust settles, I imagine that's the thing that, you know, if when the small claims courts or beyond open for business in a proper way, then I just find it fascinating. It's slanderous, isn't it? What it is inferring by that language and that tape and that presence of police is it's suggestive of malpractice, and they're not helping you clear that up. It's not as if they're then mortified and taking it down an hour later because they realise what it's looking like. They're doubling down.
I know. I've just seen someone popped on about how we contacted the MP. So we did early on. With these things, there's a lot of kind of dead ends. If the council choose not to speak to you, we had to petition the MPs and the councillors to get the dialogue going. But unfortunately, again, Sarah Champion said she's not council. And so she has basically no power in this. So the council have been powered up to deal with this, and we fully appreciate that. And there's a lot of businesses. It's a very difficult job, and that's why I kind of sent my risk assessments through for this one on behalf of the gym. But you know that they can't help. So
sometimes people do perceive that your MP can just supersede, but actually it isn't like that, is it? Because you've got distributed and devolved measures, and also you've got the enforcement of some of these things. And I suppose I just wanted to, that's a really useful point for us to make. We said off air, didn't we, that we wanted to make sure that there is a relevant distinction, because there is and I have some sympathy. In fact, I suppose I have a bit of an interest in a way. I find it interesting when you've got these random ass hairdressers that are quoting the Magna Carta on a political level to say that it's, and you know, I'm interested in that to some extent. You know, it's like I'm fascinated by the politics of it. However, there's an incredible amount of daylight between that vaguely interesting political dispute, but clearly there's no ambiguity as to whether or not the letter and the spirit of the law is that they should be shut. This is not that, is it? There's such a relevant difference, and one of the things we need to be clear of is that as professionals, if we're going to get behind this cause, we need to make sure that we don't end up muddying the water as if this is just a general lockdown-based grievance. Not to say that that's nonsense. I'm just meaning that this is a very different situation.
Exactly. We're not like Nick and the gyms coming together trying to petition why gyms were closed in a tier 3 when the evidence doesn't support it. Yeah. Which champion cause, fantastic, go by the evidence, we're all evidence-based, great argument. We're just wondering why we've been shut.
Yours is different, yeah. You're legally allowed to.
Yeah, and the actions, because we've got post-op patients. So we're not just kind of, if you're thinking about like typical MSKs and a few people, like we've got post-op patients that are on protocol, then we've gone into lockdown, and then now we're saying, and we're shutting the clinic, and we've got they've given us 24 hours, and the email came at like 2:30. So we had however much of that working day plus the morning to just basically cancel everyone. So we've had to basically just cancel the clinic. Staff we're all on pause. My colleague and I are now trying to find all the different solutions that we can, and we'll try and move it if we can. But it's the patient care impact side of it. So again, there's been no saying, right, okay, we think you need to close. We're really sorry, the legislation. Like, well, we've got a full case list. How can we deal with that? They've just gone, not our problem, move your practice. Versus, can we work with you? Can we have a few days? Can we look at our vulnerable patients?
They're not buying you sufficient time. I mean, obviously, it's been plenty talked about on this show, is that there is a certain style of caseload that you can somewhat serve virtually, at least for a period of time. But you imagine that you need the time frame to actually move that. Plus, much discussion and conclusion that's come from this show and beyond is that we all know that there's plenty of other stuff out there, and especially with regards to patient choice, that just can't necessarily be appropriately served, or by patients that have been through that process, decided that they do want face-to-face care under appropriate risk assessment. in 24 hours, you're not going to get anywhere close to being able to manage that sensibly and safely, even if you had a massive team. But it sounds like it's not as if you've got 20 staff that can be repurposed to administrate that. So it all falls on you within 24 hours.
Yeah, it's put. I mean, so we received the email about 2:30 saying, "Here's your legislation. Now you've got 24 hours." They were outside at 3 o'clock with the police the next day, so they were really hot on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
mad, isn't it?
and I'm trying to keep everything super professional, but there is. So when we've been served, I must have had a half an hour argument with them over just. They were trying to give me, like, tell me off. I felt like a naughty boy, right? I was told, and I'm quite well read, so I was giving it back, saying, "Well, no, this is not the case." The best part of this is the environmental officer that was telling me off didn't have a mask on and wasn't socially distanced from a colleague. I'm not kidding. She stood outside, but she's breaching COVID law herself. There's also a reporter in a car next because we're about to do an interview. So that's nothing to do with us. If they snapped a photo and that comes out, then that's nothing to do with us. We're not trying to be spiteful, but the hypocrisy.
Tell you what, I mean, I don't know if you did, but if that photo does come off, I hope you're in like excessive PPE, 3 masks.
So legitimately, I wasn't ready for it. So I was just in jeans and a hoodie with my mask on.
This is the shame. You can imagine the optics would have been great if you were in our full clinical PPE, gone for visor for effect at distance, whilst there. Then, but the hypocrisy that's central to this obviously has been highlighted by many people. But when it comes to the clinical specificity of it, that's the thing that's so fascinating, is that their egg on their face is going to be so obvious when the detail emerges, and we're obviously really close to the detail. They're not, and they're treating you like said cowboy hairdresser that is making a political case, and they're just not right to.
The best bit was her kind of closing line to me was, "How hard is it to move a massage bed?"
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've probably got more things to worry about than feigning professional offence. How dare you call us a massage? But I think that's the ignorance, though, isn't it? It speaks to the ignorance of them not understanding the circumstance at all.
Of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bespoke equipment, and you mentioned as well, you used a good example in one of your videos about the fact that you've got the nutrition business, the meal prep business and stuff. You've got a commercial kitchen, which is obviously going to be bespoke, but also, even if it's not a practice that's full of gadgets and gizmos, there is something to be said, especially in this time of protocol, whereby the way in which you've set up to be COVID safe is relevant to your bricks and mortar. Like, it's not just about what you're doing. Obviously, we're the interaction between therapist and patient is where the magic happens with regards to what we do, rather than it being bells and whistles compared to a commercial kitchen. But the bricks and mortar are incredibly relevant to the risk assessment. That is not an easy thing to lift into somewhere else.
It isn't. So the meal prep business has nothing to do with us. They're great, right? But a large demographic of their people are parents, etc., or sons and daughters, but they're subscribing to a weekly package, and it's fresh food stuff, so it's only got like a 3-day list to vulnerable people. So that's one. Number two is this meal prep company donated 1,500 meals to vulnerable kids as part of like just getting everything going about 2 weeks ago. So and they've got, it's a commercial kitchen. You're not going to have your oven in the middle of the squat rack. That's its own separate independent entity. But we all share the roof and the toilet. That's the problem. So in the healthcare business, and they've picked on like the saints of food prep. So
that's the thing that makes my skin crawl, is that the mistargeting. I mean, the thing is, it's. Sometimes you wonder, don't you? Because there's some scandal merchants in the media and stuff where they're deciding to double down on these two girls that had a coffee and stuff like that. And sometimes you wonder, like, definitely a point of hypocrisy. It seems ridiculous, seems heavy-handed, but you wonder, these isolated instances, jobs worth copper or something like that. But unfortunately, the more stories like this we hear, and the fact that the bureaucracy that we know exists is then having to just try and interpret laws, and that these are people that are completely clearly underqualified and not able to understand the specifics of these businesses or the legislation, means that these things are more commonplace than people realise. And unfortunately, that does get at least small p political. And that as an industry, it's the counterproductive nature of it on public health is something you're right to continue to emphasise, and something that I think I've realised we're in overtime. I've just got so stuck into this conversation. So I'll let you go in a second, Jason. But when it comes to my point on call to action, as I mentioned to our listeners, I do feel like we need to be careful to make sure we offer some daylight between the general political lockdown grievances, of which I'm not suggesting anything about, and this being a legal injustice based on the letter of the law, not just the spirit of the law. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think, highlighting the hypocrisies on a public health level and speaking as professionals about the cause of what we've done to try and get our robust governance processes, how we've collaborated as a community to do that, and that despite best efforts and despite lots of money that we're all spending and wasting in gapping all our appointments out and all those different procedures that we're right to do, but despite all that, is still being closed. And I think that those are the sorts of things I'd like to highlight. Anything else you want to do as part of a call to action?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is I've actually had a call from the CSP to have a conversation after this. It would have been great before, but I'll see what's going on with that. So call with CSP, clarity with our legal team. Then I'm going to start releasing stuff on social media. So I'll show our exact clinic location, and I'll try and put it through in an articulate way that can go viral. And I know it sounds awful, and I'm not trying to buy social media things, but our Instagram's Regen Physio, and I think Facebook's Regeneration Physiotherapy. But what would be really helpful from our community is if people can just comment and share and try and help us get a bit of weight behind this, because like I said, we've gone to MPs, it's dead ends. We've gone to councillors, it's dead ends. I've emailed the mayor, not had a reply. So we're going to have to, unfortunately, pursue the social side just to try and get a little bit of outrage and see if we can get this looked at. Because again, it is more than just ourselves. If this starts to roll out into the wider community, and if other councils start to take this stance, it seems a personal stance, but if it does start to go further that way, it could have massive implications for healthcare. So if people can just help back it, and also I'll do questions and answers and things on those socials, so I'm more than happy to help with people.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a really good point. I noticed then we've got several messages here from various different places. By the way, wherever you're listening to this, obviously you can take your pick. Really, we're across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So please do, if you're tuning into future tuning it overs. But many a comment coming in support, Jason. I'm sure people will take up this cause appropriately. As I said before, we are certainly on a legal level more vulnerable. We shouldn't be. Neither of us should be vulnerable, but generally speaking, situated as part of a unit as an underlet within a gym. Granted, with our own entrance, and we fortunately do have our own toilets. But generally speaking, you can imagine if precedent is set, you're absolutely right. And so we need to make sure we speak up for these injustices before it then rolls out. We're all a bit war weary, we get it, but let's take the low-hanging fruit, support appropriate causes on social media. Think of it as being a new media version of getting the press involved. There are these two-pronged attack really with regards to sort of old and legacy media, of which I know you're engaging, and we can support that. But also when it comes to the new media, social media, this is outrageous. Outrage is appropriate. It's not clickbait. We're not keeping 20% of this away from you because there's a story under the story. We've tried to bear all in this conversation and beyond. Jason's been very upfront with everything, and so please do get behind it. It's something that we really do need to make sure we step up with as a community. Otherwise, we'll have regrets if it comes for all of us.
Yeah. I just really quickly just want to address Sarah's comment there saying that we've not been in touch with the CSP. We have called and sent emails in. We've also asked on some larger social media platforms for people to tag CSP reps in for us. And I do appreciate that. We have had a call today, is what I'm saying.
Just before we came on air, when we were just chatting beforehand, the CSP had called Jason. But it'd be interesting to see how that goes. But as was discussed in my episode with Alex McKenzie, as our part of a year in review that we published on Physio Matters in January, Alex was clear as to one of the things that the CSP had been reflecting on is the fact that the CSP is for individuals as members rather than as businesses, and this becomes a business issue, even though Jason is a member. And Alex was open about the fact that is a conflict that they had been underexposed to until the pandemic, and so this does speak to that gap that we talked about on that podcast. If you haven't listened to that, then that's me and the Chair of Council at the CSP reflecting on a complex year of 2020, and some of the issues we discuss on that, obviously not speaking about this case individually, which has happened since, but certainly that speaks to some of those things and conflicts that occur in private practice. And so please do have a listen to that, and please make sure you pass comments. Jason's going to, unfortunately, he's got more time on his hands than he'd like, so he's going to be on the socials, he's going to be on the comments, and please do keep an eye on his stuff. Remind people of those handles again, and then we'll wrap up, mate.
So Instagram, it's at Regen Physio and Regeneration Physiotherapy on Facebook.
Nice one. Thank you very much. And all the best, mate. You know, you've got our full support and backing. Please keep informed. And also, any appropriate intervals you see fit to jump back on this show, know that you've, we're definitely here for you, and you can come and use it as a sounding board as well.
Definitely. It'll be better than posting stretchers. So,
yeah, it's a bit more box office, you think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Take care, mate. All the best.
All right. Bye.